Hi! If you are an international student and you are wondering how much 3 years at Imperial College London is going to cost you, a rough estimate would be £168,000 from 2021 to 2024. Now, how did I get this amount? Let me break it down for you. If you are new to this channel, I'm Teck Yan, a final year student studying material science and engineering. Recently, I've been posting a few uni videos and a few uni vlogs, and most of the questions I get are from incoming students to Imperial College London. Now, since about 65% of Imperial College students are not from the UK, which means they are international students, people would be curious to find out how much it would actually cost to study at Imperial for a 3-year degree. Now, if you're not going to study at Imperial College London, or you are going to study at any other London Unis or maybe other UK universities, you can just tweak my breakdown accordingly and input your own expenses and your own rent to get the final figure. Before I go any further, the overall amount of £168,000 sounds daunting, and it really is. But the thing is, a lot of international students that I know are actually on some form of scholarship, so just because the amount is very large, don't strike your option out just yet, because you might be able to receive some sort of scholarship or funding to help with your education. Now, here are the underlying assumptions in my calculations, but you can adjust for it for yourself. Now, firstly, I'm doing a 3-year undergraduate degree studying material science and engineering. Secondly, I stay walking distance to the campus, and I have 2 other flatmates. Now, thirdly, which is going to be quite a big factor, is that I think my social life is acceptable, but if you are here and you want to party more, then your expenses might be a lot higher than mine. Okay, the 3 big brackets that I would be covering for the cost breakdown would be, firstly, the tuition fees. Now, this is going to be the largest part of your overall cost. Secondly, it's the monthly allowance you can expect to live on for the entire 3 years, and this will include rent, food, transport, and leisure. Now, thirdly, it will be miscellaneous expenses. Now, miscellaneous expenses can be broken down into one-off expenses and recurring expenses, and you can use this to aid in your own calculation if you are here in London for more than 3 years, if you're doing your PhD or if you're doing your master's degree here as well. Now, firstly, tuition fees. Okay, so when I started my degree in 2018, my tuition fees was £29,500 a year. Now, that is very expensive, but it has only gone up every year since. For the incoming students of 2021, you can expect to pay £33,750 a year from 2021 to 2022. On average, because tuition fees increase with inflation, it generally increases about £1,000 a year. So for the second academic year, you would probably be paying about £34,750, and for the third year, you will be paying £35,750. And this adds up to £104,250 just on your tuition fees alone. Is it worth it? Up to you. You can leave it in the comments below. So I did a bit of research, and engineering is going to be a bit more expensive than some other courses. So if you're doing an engineering degree for 4 years, you will be expecting to pay about £140,000 just on tuition fees alone. But if you're not studying engineering or you are in other UK universities, you might be paying less, and this information can always be found in their school website. But you can just add about £1,000 a year increment for your tuition fees. Now, secondly, the next largest thing you have to account for would be your monthly allowance. Now, monthly allowance is a bit tricky because it really depends on what is your lifestyle, where do you stay, how much you spend on food, how much you spend on leisure, and how often you travel. This amount I'm going to give you is an aggregate that I got from some of my friends that have a more active social life and some of my friends that have a less active social life. This is going to provide you a decent standard of living for a student. So I would suggest from 2021 to 2024, you can expect to spend or have an allowance of about £1,600 a month. And this includes food, rent, utilities, leisure, and transport. Now, how did I get £1,600 a month? I've already adjusted it for inflation for the next 3 years. So if you want, you can check from 2021 to 2022, you could receive about £1,550 a month, and then you add £50 each for each subsequent year. Now, £1,600 a month for 3 years is going to cost you £57,600 in total. Now, that is really quite expensive, but it's expected because you're living in London, and a lot of the universities are in central London like LSE, KCL, and UCL. So now let's do a deeper dive into what £1,600 a month gets you. And this is going to be based off me and a close group of friends. It's basically a compilation of our lifestyle. So for me, I pay about £780 a month for rent, which is about £195 per week. And I think that is quite reasonable. If you stay with housemates or you stay with flatmates, you could potentially get a rent that is similar or cheaper than this. Now, of course, if you were to get a smaller room, like the smallest room in my house, or if you were to stay further from uni, then you could potentially get it to about £600+ a month, excluding utilities. Now, I've already made a video about my house and my room tour and the associated expenses that comes with it. I will link it either on top or at the end of my video, and you can check it out later. Apart from rent, I pay about £60 per month on gas, utility, water, Wi-Fi, about £15 per week, and I think that's quite reasonable. For food, I go grocery shopping about twice a week, £30 each time, so I spend about £60 a week on groceries, and I cook most of my meals. But I also eat out about 2 or 3 times a week, and that I will set aside about £30 a week. Also, because I drink a lot of coffee, Nespresso coffee, and I drink about 3 capsules a day, which amounts to £1 a day. So in 1 month, I spend about £30 on coffee, which means the grand total for my food in 1 month would be £390. Now, in terms of transport, right now it's literally zero because we are in lockdown and I don't want to take the tube, so it's zero. But in a scenario where there's no COVID, because I stay walking distance to uni, I mainly just walk. The only times I really take the tube is when I used to pedal at Richmond Canoe Club, and I pedal 2 or 3 times a week. So my overall transport expenses and the occasional times I go out would lead to about £30 a month. Now, your transport costs might go up if you were to stay further from uni, but that would probably be reflected in a lower rent. Now, in terms of other expenses based on subscriptions or one-off purchase, my phone bill is about £17 a month, and my canoe club membership, I pay an annual amount, but it's about £20 a month. Now, in total, if you add up 30 plus 17 plus 390 plus 60 plus 780 plus 20, it will give you about £1,297 a month. Now, the remaining £200 to £300 you might save. It could be a rainy day fund where things crop up, your bike breaks down, or what people would usually do is to save up this amount of money and to use it for ski trips, spontaneous road trips, holidays, and things like that. That being said, this actually really depends on where you stay, who you stay with, your social life, and how much you want to spend. This is where it really ranges quite a lot. For me, this is what I would work with, but I have a housemate that could spend £900 a month, but he would walk 40 minutes to school every day, and right now he's spending about £1,000 a month. But then there are also people that eat out a lot more often, and their expenses could go up to £2,000+ a month. So this is really up to you, but £1,600 a month is what I would say a reasonable amount to set aside. Now, we're on to the last portion, which is miscellaneous expenses. Miscellaneous expenses can be broken down into one-off expenses and recurring expenses. Now, one-off expenses that I will talk about, which are expensive, would be firstly, as an international student, you have to pay for this thing called Immigration Health Surcharge, which is basically to access the NHS system, I think. I've never really used it, but it's a one-off £600 payment, a 500 plus £600 payment. Secondly, it will be winter clothes. Now, because I come from Singapore, so my winter clothes weren't really sufficient and I had to buy it over here. But £200 can get you a good enough jacket from North Face, and it's going to be warm enough for the weather in London. And a good winter boots from Timberland would maybe cost you about £150. In your first year, you're going to have a lot of setting up costs like pots, pans, spices, which really adds up, your monitor, a table, furniture from IKEA, soap, pillow, duvet, things like that. I would say setting aside £200 for that should be sufficient, and maybe another £200 for safety. In uni, you're probably going to need a laptop. If you don't have a laptop, I would suggest getting one, but if you don't want to spend money on a laptop, Imperial College actually lends you a laptop if you don't have one for about £50 for the entire duration of your course. But it's quite slow, so you might want to invest in one. So this brings us to a grand total of £1,420 for one-off miscellaneous expenses. And in terms of the recurring expenses, that is expensive. Firstly would be private health insurance. I'm not sure if other people get private health insurance, but I got private health insurance, which cost about £300 a year, which is £900 in total. For return flights, you could set aside about £800 a year, which adds up to £2,400. Also, something that I find is quite important to set aside for is ski trip money, which is about £700 a year, so £2,100 over the course of 3 years. And this brings us to the grand total of £5,400. If you don't want to take the tube, you could actually buy a bike. You could get one from Facebook Marketplace, a road bike for about £100. That's what I got mine for. But a lot of things were broken, so it cost me another £100. Quite stupid. Your tuition fees will cost you £104,250. And when you add on living expenses of £57,600 and miscellaneous expenses of £5,400, this brings you to a grand total of £167,250. You can just round that up to £168,000, and that's how I got the final figure. Now, this is just going to be a very, very rough estimate. There are a lot of ways to spend more money, but there are also ways to save some money, and this is where I'm going to break it down for you. For my first year, I spent a lot of money on rent. So I stayed 5 minutes from the school campus. I stayed in Princess Gardens, Tizard Hall, and I was paying £280 a week for my apartment. It was incredibly expensive. It was not worth it at all, and I actually wouldn't recommend it. So if you were to eat out less and to walk more rather than take the tube, you could cut your expenses by a decent amount. But ultimately, because the main expense would be from your tuition fees and your rent, so I would say in total you might only be able to save £5,000 to £10,000 over the course of 3 years. So that is something you have to keep in mind, because the main bulk of your expenses are already fixed by the uni. So now you might realize that Imperial College is actually quite far off from the other London Uni, because Imperial is in South Kent and then LSE, UCL and KCL are more towards the central London area. But this rough estimate of £1,600 a month should be able to get you a decent standard of living, regardless of whether you are in Imperial, KCL, LSE or UCL. But ultimately, this is what I heard from my friends, and you might want to do a bit of research on that. Although generally, the consensus is that £1,600 is a decent amount to live on. Now, ways you can save some money. Now, firstly, for rental, if you're going home for the summer, your room is going to be vacant. Usually the contracts are like 2 years, so you're going to pay through the summer. You are able to sublet your room out to like PhD students or students coming for exchange trip with the approval of your landlord, or not. I don't know. Secondly, your Tier 4 student visa will allow you to work a couple of hours a week to make some money. I don't know much about this, but I think the information is available online. If you want to find out more about this, you can comment down below and I might do a video about this after finding out the information. Thirdly, you can rent somewhere cheaper. I would say, on average, if you're going to walk 25 minutes to uni, that's a very fair amount. So you could find somewhere that is 25-minute walking distance from the uni and one of the cheaper places. And if you have some housemates, you should probably be able to get your rental below £220 per week, including utilities and everything else. So yeah, I'm going to link some websites, maybe property websites that you can find rent on. My internet website, Thames Water, Wi-Fi, Student Oyster Card and things like that down in the description below. So if you're interested, you can go and find that out for yourself. And I hope this is helpful for you. I remember back in 2018 when I was considering to study in London, I was very curious to know how much it was going to cost me, and I was trying to find a video like this on YouTube, but I couldn't. So now that I'm about to graduate and I have all this information, I wanted to make this video to give you a rough estimate so that you can estimate how much this is going to cost you, and hopefully it has helped you out. So I guess if it was useful and it has helped you in any way, please let me know in the comments down below. Please remember to hit the like and subscribe button because I'll be making uni videos every week. I'll see you again next week. Bye!